This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to the very latest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I'm your host, Vito Jerome Chirco, alongside my sidekick, my usual partner in crime, that is the Doc, from Doc and Jock, John Macaroon. John, what's going on today?
Thank you, Vito, for the hot coffee from Starbucks. It makes the afternoon go by so much better, man. You know, you're doing a lot of different things. I'm looking forward to this podcast. I know we're going to talk a lot about the World Series that's about to start, and I'm looking forward to get your opinions on whether you think it's going to be the Cubs or the Indians. I know we're going to talk about some of the rumors that are starting to sprinkle regarding who the Tigers might be considering moving on from. And like I said, if you listen to a certain, Doc last week, I had said that maybe one of the big name pitchers might be on the move, and more people are starting to look at it and go, you know what? JV might be the guy that might bring in a haul. So we'll talk about all that on this week's Tigers Talk, man. What's going on with you?
I'm doing very well, and the Tigers, we hope, will make the right moves to be doing very well this offseason and going into the future, into 2017 and beyond as an organization. Now, Al Avila, the quote from last week, now this is courtesy of MLBTradeRumors.com. He said specifically, we want to get younger, we want to get leaner, we want to run the organization without having to go over our means. We want to stay competitive, but at the same time, this organization has been working way above its means for some time. And that's what many fans want to say to him, including myself, at times, when I think about all this and really digest all of it. It is a lot to take in because they want to accomplish the getting younger and the getting cheaper, lessening the payroll. Those two factors, they want to accomplish those two things, okay? But he's saying also he wants to stay competitive. That's a difficult task ahead of him in the front office, with that being said, Doc.
Well, obviously, what the Tigers' upper management is seeing is what the two teams that are going to be playing for the World Series have done. You had the Cubs and you have the Indians. And the Indians were spenders a little bit back in the day, and they started spending money on guys that were, guys that didn't really perform, And so they said, okay, you know what? Back in 2012, 2013, we're not, you remember that Nick Swisher deal for the Indians? My goodness. And they didn't get no return on that. And so what they decided to do was, and they looked at it, they go, whoa, we spent a little bit too much money. They scaled back. They went a little bit younger. And then when they were ready and they thought that the talent was ready to perform, then they spent and made some moves for Andrew Miller and the likes to improve the ball club. Same thing with the Cubs. Year after year, we're spending good money after bad. And they said, you know what? Let's bring in Theo Epstein. Let's build and construct a team. And then once they were able to, boom, see what they had from these trades, trading talent for youthful picks, then the draft was with the Cubs. If you look at who they've drafted, my goodness, that team is going to be not only good in 2016, but for several years and beyond. And then when they're ready to go, boom, then they're spending. The Tigers kind of tried to buy a championship, unfortunately. They got to the World Series in 2012. Unfortunately, the appearances in the World Series were not that good. I believe they only won one game in the two appearances in the World Series in 2006 and 2012. So they're changing the philosophy. The part that you said that's exactly correct is they're going to retool, but in the next season, 2017, do not expect them to be competitive at all.
Well, if you deal Justin Verlander, Anthony Fennick, by the way, I wanted to say this, wrote a piece recently about trading Verlander and or Kinsler. He said by trading one of the two, Verlander or Kinsler, the Tigers would not be competitive in 2017. And I had a beef with my colleague at the Free Press, Anthony Fennick, over that very matter, because I think if they trade Kinsler, they can still compete. Now, trading Justin Verlander, and I have something to say about that. I wanted to get into that topic, but you wanted to say something first before I cut you off there, too.
Yeah, when I say competitive, they can make the postseason. They have the young arms. When I say competitive, I mean, what's the likelihood that this ball club will be hoisting the Major League Baseball World Series trophy? Not too likely in 2017. And that's going to be, it's a hard sell because Al Avila's got to go out there and sell the team, sell tickets. How are you going to sell tickets? Anybody with a reasonable brain knows that likely this club in 2017 is going to look different, and you might lose some guys that a lot of people consider to be popular. But if you're listening out there, for the betterment of the club, we have to go through this. And if they had listened to the doc, they would have went through this last season in the last MLB when everyone was really talking about buy or sell. I was on sell. This season, I was on the sell, on that side of things. And they should have really looked to make some moves then. But, hey, better late than never. It's a good thing that Al Avila has decided that, okay, we cannot spend this much money anymore and get these kind of results. Scale back, go younger, get a haul for the talent that you have, and start over.
The question is, how different will they look? Will they drastically look different in 2017? And now the question is, they could. If they deal Justin Verlander, they would. And they're already going to lose some ticket sales by making some moves, maybe dealing Kinsler and the like of other guys in his caliber of ball player on the Tigers roster right now. And dealing Verlander would extremely alter, though, the ticket sales. And attendance would drastically, not just go down, already has started to go down, and it has made an impact, has made a dent on the Tigers, and it's why they're in this now transition mode of getting cheaper. And if they deal Verlander, they're really getting cheaper. But subsequently, once again, you lose the ticket sales and attendance goes down drastically at Comerica going into 2017, which now we got to talk about the big issue, which is the Justin Verlander scenario. Whether or not you deal him this offseason. And it comes down to this for me, Doc. It's about the coup of young players you get in return for JV. If it's substantial, 4 to 5 good young players for the future, you deal JV. But coming off of his great 2016 campaign, and if you want to be somewhat close to competitive in 2017, you can't deal JV unless you get that kind of a package, in my opinion. Doc?
And there aren't that many squads that have the cap or that have the ability to pay that salary for many years. So you're only looking at a handful of ball clubs like a Boston or the Dodgers or the Cubs, big money teams, the Yankees. And so the team that everyone's kind of looking to is the Boston Red Sox, in that they have a plethora of young talent, and everybody knows that Dave Dombrowski is willing to trade, a lot of prospects for proven talent. But the thing that we all have to remember is that Justin Verlander at any time can exercise his 10-5 rights. He's been with he's been with the Tigers for 10 years. He's played for he's played in major leagues for 10 years and 5 with the same club. So he has the ability to veto any trade, and that may happen. I think he might exercise that, even though he may know that the club is willing to shop him. If he seems like he's settled into the community, he seems like it's relatively easy to live his lifestyle here in Michigan. So I don't see an advantage for him unless it's maybe to a team like the Cubs or the Indians or the Dodgers, who are right there on the edge. I don't know if the part that we all need to know and question is he willing to leave the comforts of what he's known for his whole career to chase a ring? He might do it, but at the same time, you have to remember, he has that right. It's been done before.
The veto is powerful, and you said it, and you know what? 'Cause I'm powerful. The veto is always powerful, but you said it like, this is how you said veto. You said the veto. To make it really enunciate it and make it even seem more powerful, to emphasize it, it's powerful. The veto. The veto is powerful. And that is powerful for a guy like JV, who has that right to veto any trade now with his 10-5 rights. And that's key for him in searching for his new ball club if he does entertain the idea of being dealt. And specifically to start off with the Tigers, entertaining the idea / possibility of dealing JV, which it would be for a large group of young players. Thing is, with that scenario for Justin Verlander, from his standpoint, he's been here now for a while. For a long time as a Tiger, has only known the Tigers organization. So he's got to believe right now, if he decides to allow the Tigers to trade him, he would have to consider the fact that this team is not in the right position to win right now. And he would have to go in the direction of going to a team that has a better chance to win right now, as you said. But a team like the Indians, I don't think are too appealing. And it wouldn't be in the division. He's not going to get traded to another AL Central club. And they might trade him out of the entire American League because they want to avoid having to face him in the playoffs potentially going forward. So you trade him to an NL ball club, and I think it has to be to a big market club that has some luster, right, that can offer that star appeal, that star status even more to Justin Verlander, because he's a bright lights kind of guy. He's a Hollywood kind of guy. And his future wife now, Kate Upton, is a model, supermodel, who is of that lifestyle. She is all about Hollywood. So she wants to live out there, right, with all the glitz and glamour in LA or another big market like New York, the media capital of the world. So I say there's only a few teams that he would actually waive his no-trade clause to join because of that factor, with Kate Upton being brought into the equation.
Man, Vito, it's one of those things where you understand what the Tigers are trying to do. They have to cut payroll. A lot of people are now speculating that the ball club is under the control of Chris Ilitch, and that this might be something where they're trying to cut the payroll, trying to do whatever they can, really with efforts to sell the ball club to somebody else. You know, Mike Ilitch is still alive. We all know that his health has been failing, and he tried so hard to bring Detroit a World Series. And I give him credit. He did everything he possibly could. He brought in a caliber of manager that could do some things. He turned the tides around from the era when the Tigers didn't have that much success. So I give him credit for spending that money. It's just when you evaluate it, it just didn't result in the championship that we all wanted. So now you have to, and we'll have to decide and observe, do we trust Al Avila to deconstruct this squad and bring up young talent and trade for talented individuals to make up a roster that can compete? And that's going to be Al Avila's job. Right now, I can say honestly, I'm skeptical based upon what I've seen, because one of his early decisions is to retain a manager that is likely, in my opinion, probably just going to be let go at the end of 2017, and you're just delaying the inevitable another year. So that kind of is a negative grade on my, for me, that's a negative in my book for Al Avila keeping Brad Ausmus. Some of the moves that he made in the 2015-2016 offseason, not really impressed with. And so it's going to be very important that Al Avila really improve and, really bring in some talent here, because real quick, you kind of sense that this fan base is on edge, and this fan base is probably ready to kind of say, you know what, forget it, because you start to notice with the attendance, it's been down the last 4 or 5 years consecutively, and it's just one of those things where you can't sustain a payroll that high when your attendance is low and you're not getting those playoff gates. It's just something that you can't have.
Avila's got to prove himself so big time this offseason and what he does at the ball club. And he had some negative marks from last offseason, and from this one to start off with retaining Brad Ausmus, picking up his contract option for a 4th year. But what really carries more merit is the fact that he acquired Mark Lowe, acquired Mike Pelfrey, when he could have brought Doug Fister back. Didn't do so, made some bad decisions. Definitely. And you can say that to me, but he did. He definitely did. Al Avila made some questionable moves that didn't pan out in 2016. Now, as the team goes into a new era, into this transition mode of retooling, it looks like, too big time. Well, this might be to the advantage of Al Avila, who's been a scouting guy. He might know how to build better for the future than to build for the current to win now. So I got to give him that much credit. And you got to leave this leash out there for him still and give him the benefit of the doubt, to the extent to where you can't judge him just based off of this one season, his first full season as a GM in the big leagues. And he has the experience, I know he did, as an assistant under Dave Diaz, his right-hand man in Motown. And remember, with that being said, he was influential in getting that Miguel Cabrera deal. You got to believe that he was influential in getting that deal struck with the Marlins, that big coup of getting Cabrera, who's the best hitter now of this generation for Tigers franchise history, but also in Major League Baseball the last decade, he's been the Albert Pujols. Cabrera's been the machine. A Triple Crown winner at that. So you got to give him credit for that. How about for picking up JD Martinez? Al Avila, remember, was influential in getting JD. Nobody wanted him, and they picked him up from the scrap heap. And look at what he's turned out to be. And now his biggest move might be dealing JD to get something good for the future and a few good players for the future for the Tigers ball club.
Check this out. Did you hear the news a little bit this week that kind of was released kind of lightly about JD? In that last year, before he signed the 2-year deal, that the organization kind of came to him with an offer that was a little bit more, longer term, and JD kind of went like Max Scherzer did and said, no, I'm not going to take that. And so he, the organization kind of settled with him on a 2-year deal with the intent that probably this is somebody that if he does well is going to shop himself on the open market. So JD's looking to cash in.
Who wouldn't be, though, right? After his great second half, his good season so far with the Tigers, and he's on the right side of 30, under 30, will be soon 30, but look at his numbers.
I thought about this when I heard this. For me, I'm not I would obviously listen to big-time offers, whether it be, in the neighborhood. If he's hitting 30 home runs a year and 100 RBIs and he's doing what he's doing, of course, he's going to command upwards of $20 million plus. For me, in how I observe myself, I would love to obviously take the tour around Major League Baseball, see all the facilities, see what is out there for me. But if I was drafted by a team like the Tigers, and they believed in me, or I was brought onto a club from another club and they felt like I was the guy, I would say, okay, I would be like, listen, I'm a hometown discount kind of guy. I would take $18 million a year, $17 million over a long period of time. I would actually look to the Bobby Bonilla deal. I'd be like, listen, if you want to backload me a couple $1 million a year for the rest of my life until I'm 90 years old.
But who's going to do that now? Now you're
the Nationals did it. The Nationals did it. They backloaded the Max Scherzer deal.
They did. Teams have done it, and recently with the Nats, but who else has really done it? It doesn't happen consistently. That's my point here.
No, but I'm saying
JD.
For me, what I would do is, if I was JD Martinez, I'd look at the Tigers and say, look what they did. They picked him up from the scrap heaps. They showcased him. Without the Tigers, he would not be JD.
He'd be nothing.
Right.
Think about it. Who else would have given him that great of an opportunity, right?
Exactly.
So will he be loyal?
But I don't blame him. I'm saying what I would do. I'm a hometown guy.
Yep.
Give me a 10-year deal, $180 million, so much up front. I'll take a little bit less up front and backload it at the end. You can give me a couple million every year for the rest of my lifetime, even after I'm retired collecting a check. That's me. But at the same time, maybe at the end of that contract, I might also, by then, maybe look to go to a winner and kind of do what the NBA guys are doing. Is just play out my career with the Tigers, then boom, the next year go to the Cubs or the Yankees and try my best, a la the backup catcher with the Cubs now with doing the victory tour.
David Ross.
Exactly.
Well, let me just say this. So a 10-year
Ross
deal for JD Martinez would mean that he's 39 at the end of the deal.
Yeah.
And now, would he command that kind of money, that kind of a long-term contract? Probably not. Now, I think teams will give him 5 or 6 years. Well, the Tigers, though, do they believe it's worth it to invest in him that long-term with that kind of money? I don't know, because of the fact they have Justin Upton, who now we've heard they might unload his contract, which would be better for the Tigers. They'd be better suited to do that, but the thing is, it's harder to get rid of J-Up, and that's why people are talking about JD Martinez being dealt so highly right now.
And the fact that they know that, okay, he's going to, we got to get something for him because he's going to leave.
He's leaving probably. He's already Max Scherzer'd you. You got to deal him because Max Scherzer, what did they get for him? Nada. And now we got to move on to a guest, our first guest of this podcast. It is Kyle O'Connor of 5widesports.com. I am now labeling him as our Cubs correspondent, as he's been on probably a handful of times now, Doc, too.
Yes, I definitely want to get his insight into what he did the night that the Cubs clinched, because it was an amazing scene to watch on television. Obviously, the town is ablaze with excitement, potentially ending the drought. You could tell the passion that the Cubs fans have. So I'm interested to get his take, and I know we'll have some good Cubs insight from Kyle O'Connor.
We will, right after this quick commercial break here on Tigers Talk. Hey guys, it's Vito Chirco from Top Cat Sales in downtown Royal Oak. Are you looking for team apparel for your high school, your club sports team, or your corporation? Well, if so, then look no further than Top Cat Sales, located on the east side of Main Street in downtown Royal Oak, between 11 and 12 Mile. Through founder and former University of Michigan quarterback John Wangler's leadership, Top Cat Sales has developed a tradition of selling and distributing custom Adidas team apparel with the very highest quality and the very best service. So get your organization, your school, or club team all in with Adidas today by going online to TopCatTeamSales.com. Once again, the website is TopCatTeamSales.com. And remember to follow Top Cat Sales on Twitter for the Top Cat Sales Coach of the Week at Team Top Cat. And now, joining me on episode number 63 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company is my man from Wrigleyville, the man from South Bend, Indiana. That is our Cubs correspondent, Kyle O'Connor from 5widesports.com. Kyle, I know you were a part of all the festivities on Saturday night, living it up. Welcome to the podcast, first and foremost.
I appreciate you having me. Today's a good day.
Oh, I know it is. For everybody that is a Cubs fan, indeed. And how was it Saturday night being part of the festivities? As I said, in Wrigleyville, I got to believe you were out late. And early into the morning, too, with that being said.
Yeah, man, it was bananas. We kind of lucked out. We were able to, a friend of a friend was able to get us into Murphy's, which is the main bar right across the street from the stadium there. And it was full capacity. It was like a 4 to 6 hour wait to get into Murphy's. Other bars were pretty much the same thing. People flooding the streets. The Fox set was, 50 yards away from where we were, right outside the stadium. And you really can't ask for it to go better than it did. I mean, you had the leadoff base hit was probably the most tense time of the entire night, and that was immediately erased by a double play by Javi. And then from there, you jump on Kershaw early. Hendricks is cruising. It was pretty much a tense-free, celebratory night. And once we got to like 7th, 8th inning, I mean, you looked around and you could see people were just bawling around Wrigley. And then it turned into a massive party.
I mean, the biggest party that you've ever seen in your lifetime, probably, right? At least as a Cubs fan.
Oh, yeah, not even close. It was, we left Murphy's right after the double play that ended the game. And to get like over to the Harry Carey statue, which was 30, 40 yards away, it took about half an hour. I mean, it was shoulder to shoulder. It was stomach to stomach. I mean, just an unbelievable amount of people going bananas. Obviously, the Fox set was right there. And I know when we finally got around to leaving pretty late, there were still people trying to get into Wrigleyville, and they had to set up barriers not to let anybody else in.
Kyle, you said you left late. How late was it?
It actually wasn't that bad because I was with a friend in Chicago, and I drove back to South Bend that same night. I think we got back to South Bend, which is about 70 miles. We got back here at 3:30, I think. So probably left Chicago about 2:15.
Now, I saw some of your photographs that you were posting on Twitter on Saturday night and then early into Sunday morning, and I saw one, I believe, somebody crawling up to a traffic light, hanging from a traffic light. How crazy was that? And was that the wildest experience of them all on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, there was a few of those. Right outside Murphy's right afterwards, someone had climbed the street light right in front of Murphy's. They only got up to about the street signs, though, and then as we moved down, it was the same thing about up to the street sign. But then the photo you're talking about was out in front of the marquee in Wrigley Field, and there's a full street light going all the way across. And yeah, this dude was just hanging from it. He knew when he came down he was going to be arrested, so he stayed up there for as long as he could. But I mean, there was more than one person hanging from street lights. There was people walking around with their own speakers, just dancing in the streets. People throwing beer everywhere. It was wild. And the cool thing about it was men, women. I saw age 10 up to 80, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Middle Eastern. It was just a melting pot of Cubs fans, and it was just a great time for everybody. The friend I went with is actually a White Sox fan, and he was right there enjoying it with everybody else too.
I love it. I love to hear that all walks of life being able to enjoy it Saturday and early Sunday morning in Wrigleyville. Now, you said you had a White Sox fan with you that enjoyed it as well. I don't think my brother would have. No offense to my brother, but I don't think he would have at least. So I got to say that and call him out a little bit.
But, no, I understand that. I don't expect most White Sox fans to be thrilled with what's going on. But, yeah, in his case, he was right there with us. He wasn't, like, jumping on bars or anything going nuts, but he was just there hanging out, having a good time, and didn't even wear any White Sox gear.
That is awesome. And now you guys were thrilled, obviously, with the clinching game Saturday night to get into the Fall Classic. And for the Cubbies, the first time since 1945. All the way back then was the last time, and that's when the Cubbies played our hometown Detroit Tigers. Tigers, sorry, right. As you know, Kyle had to win it. Won it in 7. Hank Greenberg came back from World War II, got it done. I think 2 home runs, 7 RBIs in that series for the Tigers. So, anyways, the Cubs have a big bat. Maybe not a Hank Greenberg-esque bat, but Kyle Schwarber, who's coming back into the lineup for this series. And what kind of impact do you expect him to make in this year's Fall Classic?
I mean, he's going to have an impact one way or the other. If he goes, I mean, let's say tonight he's batting in the 5 spot. If he goes 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts, he's still going to have an impact. I mean, he keeps it pretty simple. Especially if there's a righty out on the mound, he's going to hit you. He sees the ball and he hits the ball. He really doesn't try to do too much. He just hits the ball as hard as he can, and he's really good at it. So just having him in the 5 spot and knowing what he can do. And the last time they played the Indians, it was basically batting practice for him. I mean, he was they couldn't get him out. Putting him behind Zoe in that 4th spot, he'll bat ahead of Javi in the 6th spot. That puts the pitcher in a really tough predicament. You have to throw Zobrist strikes now. And as we know, he has one of the best eyes in baseball. I mean, he's going to get on base, and he's already protecting Rizzo and Bryant. So you have to throw him strikes because you can't get to Schwarber. And then you have to throw Schwarber strikes because you don't want to get to Javi either. really makes the lineup a lot deeper. So even if he doesn't hit well and his timing's off a little bit, he's still going to have an impact. But if he comes back ready to rock and he's hitting well, I mean, we all saw last postseason what he's capable of. He can really hit the ball, and with potentially 4 games being in an American League ballpark against a pitching depth chart that's pretty much all right-handed, it'd be a really big deal.
And how key is it, Kyle, Schwarber having that postseason experience from a year ago when he set a Cubs record for home runs in a single postseason with 5? How key is that experience, you think, going into this year's Fall Classic for Mr. Schwarber?
Yeah, it's a big deal because it wasn't even like, they were up a few runs when he hit those homers. He hit some big home runs. I think he had one in the wild card game against Pittsburgh. Obviously, he hit that moonshot against the Cardinals. That was a big one. But having that experience is going to be big because he's coming back from 6 months and he's never been in this situation before. Not only maybe he might be a little rusty, his timing could be a little off. He hasn't seen a live ball in a while. But it's the jitters of the World Series. Now, those are still going to be there. It's still the World Series, and he's still 23 years old. But at least having played in it before, I think he'll be fine. Like I said, Dan Herron was on, Pardon My Take, a couple days ago, and he really put it best that, Kyle Schwarber is not really the brightest dude around. He just grabs the bat and hits balls. And that's perfect for this situation, for everything that Chicago not having a World Series in 100 years, coming back after 6 months. That's all we need him to do is just pick up a bat and hit balls, and it's something he's really good at.
Kyle, Schwarber might not be the brightest, but the game one starter for the Cubbies is, in my opinion, John Lester. But what the heck, I got to ask you, what the heck has been the problem with him with throwing over to first base? Why hasn't he done so that often? And how big of an impact could that play in this series against the Tribe?
So, I mean, it could play a pretty big impact. The Indians won't be able to lead off Carlos Santana. Last I checked a few minutes ago, their lineup hasn't come out yet, but I would be absolutely shocked if Santana led off just because they're going to want speed up at the top. I think that benefits the Cubs actually a little bit. We saw when the Dodgers tried to get out of their game plan and they tried to bunt and, mess around on the bases. It really ended up hurting them more than it hurt the Cubs. But, I mean, it is an issue. Lester, I mean, you're asking why he doesn't throw over. Watch some of the times he's tried throwing over. Even when he had to field the ball in his last start, he one-bounced it from 40 feet away. He just has the yips. I mean, it's that simple. He can't do it. He's like Rube in Major League. It's just not going to get over there if he tries. Tonight, I'm hoping to get somebody on with 2 outs and just on first. And then he's got to try to throw over. At that case, what's the worst-case scenario? They're going to steal second. They're going to steal third anyway. If you throw it away, they're going to end up on third anyway. But at least you showed you're going to throw over there. So I think he does need to throw over there, but that's why they catch David Ross with him. He's one of the best in the business at holding runners. He has the back pick that has gotten a handful of people this year, including in the playoffs. And Lester is really, really quick to home plate. So all that offsets the running a little bit. But if Cleveland just starts running wild and then Lester gets in his own head, it could be an issue. And the same thing with Jake, the Game 2 starter. He's fine throwing to first. That's not an issue, but he has a really long delivery to home plate. So I think Indians base running is going to be a huge aspect of the series.
Tigers Talk Cubs correspondent Kyle O'Connor, 5widesports.com, has joined us today, courtesy of the Top Cat Sales phone line. And Kyle, simply, what do your Cubbies have to do to win this series?
I mean, they have to keep doing what they've done the entire year. They're starting pitching. Another kind of worry for me is that gap between starting pitching and when you get to Chapman for a clean ninth. In there, those relievers haven't been lights out. Pedro Strop, Hector Rondon, Mike Montgomery, those guys are certainly very talented, but they can have control issues, and that can lead to trouble against a team like the Indians. So starting pitchers need to go deeper than what they had been. We saw with Kyle Hendricks the other night. That was wonderful. So their starters need to pitch well. Obviously, they have a better starting rotation, 1 through 4. Kluber, it looks like, is probably going to pitch games 1, 4, and 7. So it'd be nice to beat him starting tonight. Other than that, they just need to beat the Cubs. We saw basically all through the Giants series and the first few games of the Dodgers series, Rizzo was really bad. Russell was really bad. When they turned it around, I think they ended up outscoring the Dodgers like 23-6 from there. Those guys just need a hit. Schwarber's certainly nice to have back, but he's not really needed. He doesn't have to produce, but if he does, obviously it's a bonus. So starting pitching needs to do well, and the batters need to make contact. I know you know this, being a AL Central guy, but the real unfortunate part is you know there's going to be times in the 5th, 6th, maybe even 4th inning when Cubs really get something cooking, and they're just going to bring in Andrew Miller to shut it down. So that's something that you can't let get in your head because it's going to happen. And then you may have to get to the back end of their bullpen, which has also been very good. But they are very right-handed dominant, which favors the Cubs.
So, Kyle, let me leave you with this. Who wins this series, and then in how many games as well?
Cubs in 5.
As simple as that. You went right to it. I love it. You love your Cubbies. And you know what? I got to believe they're going to do it. They're going to win their first Fall Classic since 1908. And you know what? If they do, tell me this, Kyle. How will the atmosphere be around Wrigley Field if that does occur?
And it's going to be, my one worry was it was such a party the other night that it was almost like they won the World Series. For the fan base, I can't speak for the players. Obviously, Theo and Joe know what they're doing. But for the fan base and the city, the celebration was like they'd won the World Series. I think it's going to be even more of a mess if they do win the World Series. The issue will be they're going to have to win in 5 or sweep for it to happen at Wrigley. So that's a little bit of a different situation. If it doesn't happen at Wrigley, I don't think it'll be as bad because then you don't have the, 40, 50,000 people also spilling into the streets. But if they do it at home, I've seen bars that are charging a cover. I saw one bar today, you get an appetizer, you get an entree, you get to watch the game in the bar, and you get drinks for 2 hours. And it was $225 a person. If you want to be at a table, it's $500 a person.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I can't afford that. I don't got the income for that.
Yeah, it's gonna be, and then people are gonna be there, and they're already getting charged for drinks. So they're gonna feel like they have to drink even more. It's gonna be a mess. So I will probably be taking in the World Series from my couch, but Saturday and into Sunday morning, that's certainly an experience I'll never forget.
It'll be crazy to say the least, Kyle O'Connor. And at least you got your Cubs this year because I'm sorry about your Irish. Really am.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you kind of have some short-term memory loss when it comes to the Irish this year, right?
Yeah, they're an absolute mess. They could very well finish 2-10, and it wouldn't surprise me. 3-9 certainly wouldn't surprise me. They're not in a good place right now. Nothing is clicking from administration to coaching staff to performance on the field, and it all. Ever since that night a couple weeks before the season, all those guys got in trouble. Had to kick Max Redfield off the team. It just seems like, they never really got back to where they should be. And the back end of the defense started as a problem, and now it seems like it's the least of their worries. Now it's more so damage control, not losing too many recruits like they just did to Harbaugh. It's a mess. So I'm very glad I have the Cubs to kind of divert my attention from that.
Well, Kyle, I'll let you go with that. Good luck to your Cubbies. Have a good one enjoying the series as well, and I think you will thoroughly enjoy the series.
I sure hope so. Thanks for having me on, Vito.
All right, man, I'll talk to you. And back here on episode 63 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, I'm your host, Vito Chirco, my sidekick, my partner in crime, that is the Doc from Doc and Jock. He is here with us as well. And rejoining the fray, as I like to say, Doc, what did you take from all that Kyle O'Connor had to deliver regarding his Cubbies?
I had the experience of watching the NFC and AFC championship games in a bar in Vegas, and I saw the prices that they charged for cover and what you got to pay for alcohol. It was quite the experience because you had, at the time you had New England fans, you had, a bunch of rabid fans, in the bar having a good old time. But yeah, the prices are outlandish. I would never do it again. It's not as cost effective, to go to places like that. But if you have the funds, it's fun to be with the peers. But really, the most important part is after the game, you get downtown and you have your fun. But yeah, if you want to be sitting or comfortable at any level, then forget about it. You can't go to no bar. It's more cost effective. Grab a 6-pack at the store, sit down, enjoy the game. If the game's a blowout in the 8th and 9th inning, make your way to Wrigley Field and have a good old time.
Well, think about how much they're going to charge at Wrigley Field during the World Series too for beers. Beers at Comerica, when they've been stinky in recent memory, have been highly priced. Think about at Wrigley Field how much they can charge you because people are going to drink, especially if it's all going well. Well, really, if it's going really well or going really bad, fans will drink, right? If one of those two things happens, fans drink, and they kind of just drink anyways when you go to a ballpark.
All right, Vito, so let's not, let's say that money is not an object, not an issue. Let's say, roughly speaking, Tigers, Game 5, they're clinching. They're playing well, star pitcher, maybe Michael Fulmer's on the mound, and it's going to cost you, let's say, $25,000 for like 4 tickets, relatively speaking, upper deck. but to be at Comerica Park if the Tigers were to win the World Series. If you have the money, 25 G's.
I was about to say, you said
25 G's.
25,000, 25K.
Yeah.
25 with 3 zeros at the end.
You pay it?
I don't got the money to pay it.
I prefaced it.
I know you did. I know you did. I had to say that. Money's not an object.
You pay it?
I'm cheap. I probably wouldn't.
No, it's too much, right?
Would you pay it? I mean, if I'm not paying it, I love the Tigers. I mean, you know that.
Nah, see, I've been at Comerica Park for big games. The vibe is nice. I've been there, done that. It's more fun when you're with your boys and people you care about.
Yeah.
Maybe at a bar setting, maybe at a place that's not too popular. You can watch it, have some cocktails, or just at the comforts of your home. Man, I enjoy watching a game with my big screen TV, comfortable, at your own crib. Make your own food. You go to the bathroom whenever you feel like it. You can pause the game, rewind the game. You can tweet with no internet problems. So for me, no, I wouldn't pay it. Even if money was no object, being in the arena for a championship is not that important to me. But I would love to, have that choice one day. Come on, Tigers, make me, make the network make a tough choice if the network will pay big money for, Tiger Den tickets.
And us talking about going to a bar, drinking a cocktail or two really segs greatly into our next segment with our next guest, Brendan Barkume, who I like to refer to as a beer aficionado. He likes his craft beer, so we got to hear what he has to say about what he would drink for a World Series game and get his take on the Tigers as well, coming up right after this here on Tigers Talk. And now, joining me on episode number 63 of Tigers Talk of Chirco and Company is my former Detroit Mercy colleague and De La Salle High School in Warren, Michigan colleague, Brendan Barkume. Brendan, how's it going?
Vito, it's going well, buddy. How you doing today?
Very good, and even better now that you have joined me for the first time ever on Tigers Talk of Chirco and Company, courtesy of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network and of Top Cat Sales in lovely Royal Oak, Michigan. Barkume, we got to start off by chatting about Al Avila, his quote from last Tuesday with a select amount of media members. And he had said, we want to get younger, we want to get leaner, we want to run the organization without having to go over our means. We want to stay competitive, but at the same time, this organization has been working way above its means for some time. What does all of that mean to you, Barkume, as a Tigers fan?
As a Tigers fan, I think it does a couple things to me. I mean, number one, it gives me promise for, 5 years from now that we're thinking about sustainability. We're thinking about not becoming the Philadelphia Phillies. But in the meantime, it's bittersweet, right? It's the end of an era for all intents and purposes. I think, the leadership has signaled that 2017 really doesn't matter. I think the minute you bring back Brad Ausmus and he's got nothing beyond a year guaranteed to him, then when you look at the contract situation with so many contracts up after next year, it pretty much signals that, yep, we're going to just try to let this thing go for another year, get rid of some contracts if we can, and then go into full rebuild mode. And I know Al Avila, that's a taboo word for him, but let's be honest, it's exactly what he's saying.
And I think I can tell from what you just said that you don't like Brad Ausmus, and you're joining the party that I've started here, or many other people have started via Twitter and via this kind of platform. And just tell me, just give me a summation, I guess, of what you think about the Tigers picking up Ausmus's option for a fourth year in Motown.
I think it's an extreme lack of judgment. I don't know what he's done in the field other than making some excuses for him that, yeah, he had some injuries, he had some outside noise that negatively impacted his potential performance. But what did he do himself as a manager to effectively manage games and win some that he probably shouldn't have? And I don't think I saw any of that. I realize there's been several injuries, but there were so many games that he just threw away through mismanagement, boneheaded moves, and things that just leave you scratching your head. So I don't know how you can bring him back if you look at everything just from a pure management perspective and throw injuries away.
Don't you think the Tigers right now would be in the playoffs? Would have been at least a team that made at least that wild card game, if not won the division, if they had a more capable manager, such as a Terry Francona, who's done all this great stuff with the Indians, leading them to the World Series, and without Michael Brantley as well, the star offensive player for the Indians. He only played in 11 games all of this year, and the Tribe make it in, and then all their starting arms get hurt too eventually as the season went on, and the Indians are playing in the Fall Classic.
Well, that's just the ultimate indictment of Brad Ausmus, isn't it? I mean, we lost. We didn't even lose our superstars. We lost some really nice players, but we didn't lose anyone on the same caliber of Michael Brantley. And we were only a game out of it, right? So you look at a manager that you can pinpoint 6, 7, 8 games where, gosh, why didn't he bring K-Rod in for a 4-out save? Why are you still going to Mark Lowe? You know, when you end the season only a game out of the wild card, really look at it like, yeah, there were some managerial moves that could have went one way or the other.
And Barkume, speaking of K-Rod, we got to play a game of Big Vito's over-under because I am so big. My stature is just huge. So we label this Big Vito's over-under. And this one is regarding K-Rod. And it goes as such here. What are the chances of the club picking up K-Rod's option for 2017? Over or under 50%? And I know you're a numbers guy, so you're a great guy to have on for this very segment.
I think it's way over. And I think there was something in the paper today, and I don't recall the exact figures of his contract, but I want to say it was only a couple $1 million when you consider a guy that had 44 out of 49 saves converted. You absolutely have to pick up that. I mean, that's an extreme value for what he brought into this ball club. Now, what I wouldn't do is pencil him into the closer's role immediately. He had some struggles when he couldn't find his changeup, and he had some control issues because he didn't have a fastball to lean back on. I don't think you just pigeonhole him into the ninth inning. And now he's not an Andrew Miller where you can just throw him in for 2 or 3 innings at a time at any point in the ballgame. But I think you have to start to think about your relievers differently. And that's something, again, Brad Ausmus hasn't wanted to do. But to answer your question, I think it's way over 50%.
Yeah, I think it is right
based
now.
Based on the value.
Yeah, I think right now because they want to go cheaper, lessen the payroll, and he's not going to cost a lot to pick up his contract option either for 2017. So I think it would be wise, financially speaking.
And you know what? You get down to July 31st, 2017, and he's a valuable trade commodity. If you're so far out of the race, everyone needs a reliever that time of year. If you're competing, if you're the Cleveland Indians again, right, and all you need is a reliever to finish that bullpen and make a push, you're going to give up something pretty to get him. And I think K-Rod's a really nice deadline acquisition, potentially, for a team that's competing if the Tigers are out of it.
So Barkume, now Big Vito's over under number 2. It is, what are the chances of the organization deciding to pick up Cameron Maben's option for 2017? Over or under 50%?
I'd put it right in the same ballpark as K-Rod. I think it's you're 60, 70, 80%. I know that's a wide range, but I'd put it closer to 70%, I guess. Again, the value for $9 million is extreme. I don't see anybody else in the organization you're going to bring in and convince a fan base that, hey, you should come to the ballpark today and see Tyler Collins day in, day out. I don't think you can sell that. Now, a guy like JD or Justin Upton, those are corner outfielders you can move. You're dumping more salary and you're getting more bang for your buck in terms of a return. And you actually have some internal options to go to. Steven Moya, give him a shot. I know he's not great. He's an adventurer in the outfield, but he warrants more of a look than Tyler Collins. You know what Tyler Collins is at this point in his career.
Well, yeah.
And I don't think you can sell that to a fan base.
No, Collins is a guy that says F you to everybody at the ballpark. That's who he is, and he's a guy that's light hitting, will hit maybe a little bit above 200, and Moya just might be a fourth outfielder. But the thing is, you brought it up and said it eloquently. JD Martinez probably brings you the most bang for your buck if you deal him. And if they want to get younger and cheaper for the future, you've got to deal him because JD Martinez is due for a big payday very soon here, and he probably won't stay in Motown because they don't really have the funds to pay him long term and with big money. Going forward.
The best part about JD Martinez right now is he's only due about $11 million next year. So your market is more than just your big payroll teams. It's more than the LA Dodgers and New York Yankees. You can go to the Kansas City Royals and say, all right, I've got $11 million here for 35 plus home runs, assuming he's healthy. He's Gold Glove caliber defense. I know he finished near the top of that award a year ago. You know, that's a deal you can make with any mid-market level team. It doesn't have to be your heavy hitters. Now, if it's a team that, I want to sign them for years thereafter, okay, that might limit who you talk to. But by no means does it limit it up front if you're just considering the 2017 salary and production.
So the Tigers might be trading JD Martinez. How about JV, as in Justin Verlander? Over or under 50% that JV gets moved this offseason?
Oh, you're going to make me put a number on it, aren't you?
Absolutely. Got to do it. You're a numbers man. Come on now.
Yeah. So reality says, I think it's a very small chance. I'd put it around 20%. Now, we say JD brings the biggest bang for the buck, but JV he might actually bring more considering the starting pitching market. My heart says absolutely don't trade Verlander. He's my favorite Tiger. But my head is saying, yeah, you can get a heck of a return for this guy. I mean, you're talking 2 or 3 major league ready players that can step in tomorrow and their team controlled, and you can build for the future. And at the same time, give JV an opportunity to play for a contender. So I don't necessarily want them to, selfishly, but going forward, I think you can make a business case for it.
And remember, he has those 10-5 rights as well. So you got to consider that because he has the power to veto any trade because of that. And I think he's a bright lights Hollywood kind of guy. And he has a Hollywood girlfriend, future wife in Kate Upton. So I think it would take a lot, actually, for him to waive his no-trade clause to go to another ball club.
Yeah, I don't disagree. But again, I think that's a situation where you would find something mutually beneficial. Number one, the Tigers would get out of, a contract that, in my opinion, I don't think it's grossly overvalued for what he's bringing you anymore, considering, Scherzer is going to get paid $40 million deferred after he retires. But yeah, he can approve any trade. If he wants to go to a contender in the bright lights, he can absolutely do that. He can go to a team that he's maybe always wanted to play for, and the Tigers get something back. I think it could be a win-win if the situation presents itself.
So, Barkume, I'll leave you with this. Who do you got winning this year's Fall Classic?
This year? So I'm a closet Cubs fan. I've got some family down in the Chicagoland area, and one of the first ball games I ever went to as a kid was at Wrigley. Of course, I went to Tiger Stadium first, but I want to see the Cubs end the streak. I think they're better top to bottom than Cleveland Indians, and I think some of the young bats will wake up in the World Series and do some damage on the Indians pitching staff.
And you know what? Now you have Kyle Schwarber coming back. How big of an impactful bat is that for the middle of that Cubs order, too? A guy that can, DH when they play in Cleveland as well.
And I think that's the biggest part. I think you just nailed it, is the DH. I don't know that he'll play, be much of a factor when they're playing in Chicago, but you go to that American League ballpark, he's absolutely a guy you can bring in with some thump off the bench, to fill that DH role for a few games in a series. I don't know that he'll be extremely effective, but he's a guy that you have to pitch to and can't just throw junk at him and expect him to hit it and walk into an out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's something for the Indians to think about.
Absolutely. And also, you got to take into account what he did last year in his first ever postseason. Set a Cubs franchise record for home runs in a single postseason with 5. So he's done it before. So he can do it again because of that factor as well, depending on his health, how healthy he really is, as we've both pinpointed here.
Yep, and I liken him a lot to Victor Martinez. I think that's a player comp that is quite favorable to Kyle Schwarber, a guy that can hit from both sides of the plate, has some good pop, and can hit for average. But the thing that really struck me with him is, it's a knee injury, and how similar he is to Victor. I think the parallels are there. Just hopefully he can come back a bit healthier than V-Mart did a year or 2 years ago when he tore up his knee and tried to play prematurely.
Yeah, Schwarber would look really solid in a Tigers uni, huh? Going forward at that DH spot. We would love to have him. We would love to have him.
He would.
He would look lovely.
That's a team that you present to Justin Verlander if you want to go that route and say, hey, Justin, they're a contender. They might win the World Series this year. How'd you like to join their pitching staff and have a two-headed monster with Jake Arrieta? That could be a nice selling point. You got the bright lights of Chicago. You got the young prospects. You could try to pry away from Chicago. That could be a destination that would be a good win for both sides.
Yep, I think so. Barkume, with that, I'll let you go. Nice chatting with you as usual, and you have a good one.
All right. Thanks, Vito. Take care, buddy.
All right, thank you. Doc, we just had some fun there during that segment with my man Brendan Barkume, formerly of Detroit Mercy of De La Salle High School in Warren, Michigan. And you really had some fun more than me, playing with my hair, with this, that, all while on Periscope. So you showcased it to everybody, to the masses there on Periscope. And actually, I loved it. I think people might have loved it too, and I'm hoping they did, at least a little bit, Doc.
No, I figured you were recording. You were very serious. I didn't have any ideas as to what. The thought just popped in my head, okay, Vito's recording. I'm going to throw something at him. I've always wanted to do that while you were recording and doing something like that, is just to throw something at you and something like that. But you took it in good spirit. It's kind of funny when I dropped the Kleenex on your head.
You did. And then I used it to blow my nose, so it came in handy.
So what were you thinking when I was doing that?
Why are you doing this? Are you that crazy? I knew you were already crazy. And are you just so enamored with me that you got to see how I deal with talking to somebody while being bothered? And I think I was all right. I think kept pretty well.
Now,
Kept calm under pressure and
if
kept
I was
composed.
if I was a real jerk, I just would have slid the chair right out from under you and seen.
Oh, you would have then really to test my composure level, right? But I think, hey, I did all right there talking to Brendan Barkume there, and he's a closet Cubs fan. I thought he was.
See, I wanted to bring something up, and I've talked about it with a lot of people. There was such an outpouring of support from Detroit towards the Cubs. I was like sitting there jealous. I wasn't happy for the Cubs. I've never been a Cubs fan. I've been to Wrigley Field one time as a kid, so I don't really remember it. It was part of a school function or some type of function. I've been there. It was nice to enjoy a day game at Wrigley Field, but I'm not a Cubs fan. I'm a Tigers fan. So to see all this, I know the majority of people that are Tigers fans are fans of sports, but I'm a diehard Tigers fan, and I'm a diehard Detroit fan. I don't have any B teams. I don't have any C squads. And I know there's a lot of people that have come to Detroit to work that are from other towns and things like that. So I get it. I get the whole story of, I remember how it was like being a Red Wings fan in the 90s when the Wings struggled and they finally won the Cup in 97. But I don't like all the support for the Cubs or the Indians. I'm like, you know what? Focus on how the Tigers can win. Everyone's like excited to see Go Cubs Go, sing along with them. I'm like, you know what?
You were. You were as well during a commercial break.
It's a catchy song.
You did it.
It's a catchy song. But the outpouring on Twitter and support for the Cubs, I hope that both teams experience ups and downs, and it's an up and down series. I'm just a fan of the Detroit teams, and to see all the support for the Cubs just made me more jealous and frustrated with how the Tigers are, because it's looking like we're not going to be in the Fall Classic for at least probably 5 to 10 more years. So I don't care, Go Cubs Go or whatever the tribe thing is, and to see all the side stuff going on, it just bums me out. I'm not happy.
You're more like F you to both sides, because you're not a fan of either. You're not a B team, C team kind of guy. You're Tigers and strictly Tigers, and you should be, as am I, Doc, to say the least. Now, wanted to get to this really quick. The Indians last made the World Series in what year? Because we all have talked about the Cubs. Cubs, down our throats. How about the Indians? Got to give them a little bit of love here.
38?
No, last time they made it.
97.
97, with the Marlins playing them. The then Florida Marlins, led by who? Which skipper?
Jim Leyland.
Jim Leyland, absolutely. Now, here's a little bit of more trivia here for this week's edition of Tigers Talk. The question is for you, Doc. Who got the game-winning hit in Game 7 of the 97 Fall Classic for the then Florida Marlins?
Craig Counsell.
No.
Close. Oh, it was a role player, though, wasn't it? Or was it
a future Tiger?
A future Tiger.
Shortstop.
Ian Kinsler?
Edgar Renteria. Edgar
Renteria. Oh.
Also, he did it in the bottom of the 11th.
Yes.
And that marked the first time that a wild card team ever won the World Series. How about that?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Indians had an ace, now kind of an aging vet, as in Oral Hershiser at that point, as their ace. And he didn't fare the best. Livan Hernandez was the Fish's ace at that point, and he beat Oral Hershiser in that series twice and won the World Series MVP for his efforts, Doc. So that's some trivia there about the 97 Fall Classic between the Indians and the then Florida Marlins. Now, another quick trivia note here to bring up regarding Hank Aaron, Hammer and Hank. And I wanted to bring up a few things here, kind of get into some facts about him first. And here's the first one. From 1955, his second season in the Bigs at age 21, until his last season of playing in 100-plus games in 1975 at age 41. He made 21 straight All-Star games and recorded an average of 308 plus an OPS of 941. Also during that span, guys, he recorded 8 seasons with 40 or more home runs. And his last, this is incredible, this stat. Listen to this one, Doc, intently, and everybody else listening right now. His last 40 home run season came at the age of 39. And with that being said, I just realized I probably gave away all the trivia. Well, let's see if you actually listen, Doc. I'm going to test your listening skills here, okay? During that span that I talked about, from 1955 until 1975 for Hank Aaron, he recorded how many seasons with 40 or more home runs?
Did you say 11? I'm sorry.
You get distracted so easily. I'm trying to talk with my co-host here, this nice guy. His name is John Macaroon, and he just doesn't listen at times. But it's over. Under 10. You said over. 8. It's under. You got it.
Okay.
Second try, you nailed it. It's all right. It's not bad. So 8 seasons with 40 or more home runs for Hammer and Hank Aaron. Now, his last 40 home run season came at what age? I told you to listen intently to this one.
38.
Almost.
39. There you go.
Did
That
it.
was
Okay,
close.
second try on both trivia questions there regarding Hank Aaron is when Doc got those trivia questions correct. Hey, good stuff from you, Doc, I guess, as you kind of listened there. So I appreciate when you do listen. And now we've got another guest to join the fray here, my former co-host. Actually, when you joined myself at Detroit Mercy for a in-studio interview of Adam Strozinski, who is Jock, the Jock from Doc and Jock, you guys actually were also joined, I think even by Brendan Barkume, but by Karic Jones, our next guest here on episode 63 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. And now joining me on episode 63 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, courtesy of the Top Cat Sales phone line, is my man, the one and only KJ, Karic Jones. Karic, what's going on?
Not much, V. How's it going with you?
I'm doing well. Long time no talk to. We are former co-hosts of, Chirco and Jones, and you were my co-host, panelist on Chirco and Company for a few years there. And you met the Doc from Doc and Jock, my co-host now for Tigers Talk, and John Macaroon. And we got to chat about a few things regarding the Tigers first and foremost. And the first thing is about Al Avila, the comments that he made to select media members last Tuesday in a end-of-the-season press conference. And he talked about how he wants to make the team younger. He wants to make the team leaner. And he wants to run the organization without having to go over our means. Meaning, he wants to stay competitive, as he added, but at the same time, he pointed out that the team has been working way above its means for some time. So what does all of that mean to you as a Tigers fan?
Well, I think it means Chris Ilitch is taking over, and the Tigers are never going to win a World Series with this team. And it's too bad because they're going to ship everybody but Miggy out. If Miggy was a caged animal, he'd be like the tiger that's getting old and dying at the zoo that they still leave out. And they're just going to they're going to get rid of everybody. They're going to trade Verlander for 4 or 5 good young pieces, and it's going to look really good. And they're going to trade JD Martinez, who I don't even like in the first place, but it's still ridiculous to get rid of him. And they probably can't get rid of Emart. They're probably stuck with him until he retires. It's just too bad. It's what I think they should at least wait until Mr. I dies. At least wait that long before you start, cutting everybody and cutting payroll. But the fact of the matter is, Vito, is they have spent way too much money chasing around players and chasing around a championship that didn't happen. And I really think their window was 3-4 years ago when they went to the back-to-back World Series, and they haven't done it since.
Time out. You said back-to-back World Series appearances. That never happened. You also pointed out... Sorry.
There was a year in between, wasn't there? It was close. It was like, 2 and 3 years? Something like that?
Well, 2006 and 2012, they almost made it in 2013, so I'll give you that. And anyways,
okay.
Moving on. I'll let it slide. That's one mistake. Only one strike against him, Mr. Karic Jones. Now, the other strike, you already have 2, actually. And it's that you said you don't like JD Martinez. You haven't really, it sounded like, you haven't really ever liked JD Martinez, is what you said, pretty much. And you like Brendan Bosch, though. You like Brendan Bosch, but you don't like JD Martinez and really haven't ever liked him. Explain yourself. Why is that the case?
Here's what I feel like. At least the 1 or 2 years when Bosch was good, he was like a young prospect. JD Martinez was the Astros scrap player that they got. Now, it just so happens he got here and started hitting, and that's great. But now you're going to have to, if they do sign him, you're going to have to give an almost 30-year-old a max contract. An almost 30-year-old a max contract. He's going to be 29 this year. When he gets out of his contract, he's going to be 30. It's too bad they're going to have to get rid of him because he's still got, 5-6 more years of being real productive. But, they got him when half his value was already gone.
So Karic has a beef with JD Martinez, but not so much with Brendan Bosch. Anyway,
I'm just not a huge fan of him. I don't dislike him. I think he's a good player. But
yeah, he is. Absolutely good. But I get your point. Now, going into his 30s, you don't want to really give a long-term deal to a guy who is going into his 30s, but it's not always a perfect situation. And maybe the way to avoid this is by the Tigers dealing, which looks like it will happen now if they do end up actually retooling. As I guess we can label it as that, at least a retooling process the Tigers will be entering this offseason. Now, moving on to something else, another big note from this offseason, or not really the offseason, but since the season ended for the Tigers, and that is that they decided to pick up the contract option for Brad Ausmus. What are your thoughts on that happening as well?
Well, I think Ausmus is incompetent. For someone with an Ivy League degree, I don't understand how he can't figure out how to run a baseball team. I think he's probably a real nice guy, a real smart guy. The ladies love him. He's good looking. But, man, I mean, the last 2 years have been bad, especially not getting in this year with as easy of a schedule they had down the stretch. You know, you just got to wonder if he's not the right guy, and he probably isn't. But then you look, there's not really a lot of big-name guys available. I mean, would you really want Ron Gardenhire instead of Brad Ausmus? Because that's probably who you're going to get. And I don't remember, at least I can't recall, you're a bigger baseball guy than me. I don't follow anybody but the Tigers. I don't recall Ron Gardenhire making the playoffs a whole heck of a lot.
Well, he did early on, but not recently at the tail end of his tenure with the Twins, and that's the concern regarding him as an old-school manager. And if you want to become more analytical and new-minded as a baseball team, well, you don't go out and hire Ron Gardenhire. So I think that's a thing of the past. It's not even an option and would not have been an alternative solution to turn to if they would have dismissed Brad Ausmus at the end of the 2016 campaign. Now,
so then who's the option? Manny Acta?
That's the thing. I don't know who you would hire, Karic, and that's the concern. And I think the reason why the Tigers decided to pick up the contract option of Brad Ausmus, because there wasn't anything better out there to get that is a young-minded guy who, more importantly, is of the new mind kind of analytical guy that will implement the analytical approach and use numbers more consistently. Because, as you said, I think you made a really good point. You know, Brad Ausmus has that Ivy League degree from Dartmouth, but he doesn't seem too smart at times. He seems incompetent, a word that I've used as well to describe Brad Ausmus and his managing ability. And I think he's got to really prove himself now in this fourth year. I mean, I think there's almost no way, Karic, and you tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think there's almost no way that he comes back for a fifth year in Motown.
No, not with if they cut payroll, there's no way, because he's not going to win. So if they cut payroll, and you figure they cut payroll and they get the top of the line prospect. I mean, we're talking Verlander goes to the Dodgers. They get two of those young pitchers. They get maybe one good base, not a base player, a field player, and a sub or a minor league guy. It's still going to be a year before they're ready. I mean, even Fulmer and Boyd and Norris, they were supposed to be 2-3 years. It was just a fluke they had to come out because there was nobody else ready. And Fulmer wasn't even supposed to be ready, and look, he's winning Rookie of the Years and whatnot. So there's no way he comes back because they're not going to have anybody to play besides Zimmerman and Cabrera. So I don't see it happening. And if he does come, I feel like he's being put in a position to fail. And that's what's happening.
Absolutely. I agree with you there, Karic. Now, let's talk about some teams that are ready to win right now in this year's Fall Classic, in the Cubs and the Indians. Who wins it, Karic, in your opinion, and also why?
Well, I can't pick the Indians, so I got to go with the Cubs. I want to see the Cubs win because I think it's about time. They're so young, and Joe Madden is like the Phil Jackson of baseball. He's got kind of the Zen thing going on. They're bringing up a guy who hasn't played all year to DH tonight. It's ridiculous. That Benez kid, I don't even know how to say his name, but he's been great. And I don't watch anybody but the Tigers, but I've been tuning in to watch the Cubs play. There's just something about that Cubs team. I mean, their rotation's solid. It's not like, when the Tigers got there or when the Giants were winning, where they had that 1 through 5 amazing rotation, but they're pretty good. And they're so young, they could do it this year and do it the next 3 or 4 years. So I'm really excited to hopefully see the Cubs win the championship. And if the Indians do, hats off to Tito Francona. I mean, he's really ripped that team into shape. They've been good down the stretch. And it would just be a crying shame for the Tigers to have spent all the money they did, and then the Indians and the Royals go and win the World Series in back-to-back years with farm-grown talent. That would be a real punch in the mouth to David Dombrowski. And it would probably, pretty much, if I was the Red Sox, I'd fire him at that point because he's clearly not going to be able to help you guys because he built the Tigers the wrong way.
It's a reason to be sad as a Tigers fan. That's why I don't want to see the Indians win either. And the thing is, I don't think they will because of how good the Cubbies are. And as you pointed out, Karic, already too, they're going to be good for a long time there on the north side of Chicago, being led by a great manager as well in Joe Madden. So I think they get it done. And Karic, I always love your insights. I appreciate you coming on this week on Tigers Talk. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you again soon.
No problem. Take care, bud.
And back on episode 63 of Tigers Talk. Now, what did you take from what our man, Karic Jones, had to say about the Tigers and about, I guess, the Fall Classic as well? Always, by the way, an interesting fella, to say the least.
Your boy Vito has some interesting takes, no doubt about it. And he said he's not a fan of JD Martinez. Did I hear that
But
correctly?
he's a fan of Brennan Bosch. Does that make any sense to you?
I think that sticks out. But, obviously he picked the Cubs, correct?
He did.
So I like having Karic on. In different situations, we'll also get his take on hockey. He's also a Penguins fan. So you got to
Right? Isn't that weird?
We have to preface it by saying you had, a Penguins fan
I
on.
know.
But he had some interesting takes, and I always enjoy having Karic on. He's a good dude.
Yeah, I guess we can say that. Mostly good. And Doc, you're always good. I hope this podcast was good. And I think there are two good teams playing in the Fall Classic. There are at this point, but the one that's more good than the other, in my opinion, is the Cubs. And that's why I have the Cubbies winning, as I've already really pointed out throughout this week's edition of the podcast, because I see right now Indians just don't have enough to keep up with the Cubs for a full series. So this could go deep, and I hope it does for Major League Baseball's sake. And I think it will be a ratings bonanza because you have the Cubs, who haven't won since 1908, the Indians, who haven't won since 1948. So you got these two teams with these long postseason World Series title droughts, that is, to be more precise. So that's why you gotta love this matchup. I think people do love it, and I love the Cubs more than the Indians. And I just hope, to sum it all up too, I've talked about it ad nauseum before on this podcast, I hope the Indians don't get it done because, as Karic said, eloquently said too, the Tigers never won in all those years where they won the AL Central Division title, spent all that money, and now this team comes, arises from pretty much nowhere in the Indians, almost from nowhere, and is going to win it this year. I mean, that's disappointing to all Tigers fans if the Indians do pull it out. But then there's another way to slice this, or if you want to play devil's advocate, that is, you could also bring up the point that, well, it looks good for the AL Central, for the strength of the division. But for me, that's not enough to make me feel good about the Indians winning this year. Doc, to sum it all up.
Well, Vito, unfortunately, you're wrong. It's going to be the Indians in 7. I think Tito Francona is a solid manager. Joe Madden has definitely solid managerial skills, made it to the postseason, but what's the difference between Tito Francona and Joe Madden? When Tito Francona was with Boston, he actually hoisted the trophy. And Joe Madden, again, will taste the sting of defeat because Tampa Bay lost, if you recall, when he made his appearance.
I do recall.
And so I'm going with experience. Joe Madden probably, I will say, will make one key mistake that will cost the Cubs a chance to hoist the MLB World Series trophy. I got Indians in 7. Andrew Miller will continue. He'll be the series MVP. And you got Corey Kluber. You got solid starters. And I do believe that the Cubs are playing solid, but the team that's played probably really consistently for the better part of the second half, the Cleveland Indians. And just, if you call it a wash, the very stupid fact that Major League Baseball determines home field advantage by the All-Star game dictates that Game 7, should it reach that far in the series, will be played in Cleveland. So that means, home field advantage to the American League, and so for no other reason, 7 games in Cleveland, boom, Cleveland wins it in the 7th game.
Now imagine this too. I don't like that, how Major League Baseball has determined home field based on who wins the All-Star game, the league that does, and gives it to the team representing that league, as in the Indians this season. And with the 2-3-2 format, well, Indians, yeah, they have a big advantage with that home field advantage. Anyways, though, I wanted to also bring up the fact that if the Cubbies win this year, that means Theo Epstein would have won in Beantown and in Chicago, breaking 2 long curses. How about that fact, Doc, to bring up?
You know what? Then you know what you do? You save up as much money as you can if you're the Tigers organization, and you say, write your check, whatever you want, Mr. Epstein. You're the next guy. Come here to Detroit. Wouldn't that be interesting? Boston, the Cubs, and the Detroit Tigers? Hey, now. Give him what he wants.
Indeed.
Give him what he wants. I'd rather have Theo Epstein, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. If you can get him and or Joe Madden, you do it right now. You give them blank checks, but it's not going to happen.
If he wins with the Cubs, he'll probably have a job for life.
Lifetime, until he retires. Unless he wants to move on to another team that hasn't won in a long time, right? It might be the case where he just wants to win in all these places where they've had long droughts. And because, hey, how about your legacy? It makes it look that much better, Doc.
Great podcast, sir. Very interesting to see how this series will shake out. And we'll see if this goes the distance, because I think Major League Baseball fans are going to be treated to a fascinating series.
Should be a fabulous series at that, Doc. Doc, thank you very much. Thank you to Kyle O'Connor, our Cubs correspondent now on Tigers Talk. Thank you to Brendan Barkume and Karic Jones as well for all their insights. And to all of you guys, all of you Major League Baseball fans, enjoy the Fall Classic. We'll talk to you again next week for episode 64 of Tigers Talk.